My name is Chavie. My podcast is called Totally Unexpected. And we are going to have so much fun together exploring and hearing people's stories. It's my favorite thing to hear people's stories, to understand the choices that they made, the things that happened to them that were unexpected, what made them who they are and where they are today. Like, this is the stuff that lights me up. And I'm so excited that you guys are finally going to be able to hear what I've been working on for the past 6 months, at least. The process has been amazing, lots of learning opportunities. We turned my office into like a little mini studio because we keep trying to improve my audio quality. So the first few episodes might not be on the highest level, but we keep making changes. We keep learning. It keeps getting better and better. And I actually honestly love the fact that we have room to grow. There's always room to grow. So the first guest that I'm so excited to introduce is Sara Miriam Smith. Guys, she's special and you're going to hear for yourself. She is a mom of five. She has a master's in special ed. She's an author, one of my secret dreams. Her latest book is called Are You My Mother? You can get it on Amazon. I'll put the link in the show notes, but it's a story of love and loss. And it's kind of what we spoke about on the podcast. We go through a really poignant, emotional, vulnerable journey of love and loss, right? Navigating grief, wrestling with faith through it all, and the journey of the ups and downs. And you'll hear in this episode that in real time, I was very inspired. I had a lot of aha moments. It was really an episode that stayed with me that I constantly think about. And I'm so I'm just so excited for you to hear it. So go listen, and can't wait to hear your feedback. Rate and review the podcast on whatever platform you're listening to. You know it helps. You know it does. And thank you so much. See you on the other side. This episode is sponsored by Project 6 New York Kids Hair Accessories. At Project 6 Kids, our wish is to wrap up the joy and excitement into a beautiful hair accessory that both mom and child will love. We bring you and your children high-end hair accessories at affordable prices. You can find us at our website at project6newyorkkids.com, in select stores, and at the address in the American Dream Mall. I have to say that I have tons of experience with Project 6 and Chaya, and everything that I just said to you is 100% true. Customer service is excellent. You get your goods fast. Chaya is so happy to help and is really a one-stop shop for all your hair accessories for kids, teens, and even adults. Put on a headband. It's fun. So excited to have you.
Thank you for having me here.
I love our conversations that we get to have together, and I'm so excited that we get to share a little bit with the people. I want to jump right in with just giving a little bit of a history, like how we know each other. I don't know if you have a specific moment that we started communicating. I just kind of remember DMing on Instagram, connecting on parenting.
I feel like organically we just started chatting and responding to each other's stories. My initial memory was, oh my God, she gets it. Like we are on the same wavelength.
Yes, I remember feeling the same, connecting over parenting stories. We both have children with a lot of personality and high needs and
Yeah,
some, fun. They keep us on our toes in a very fun way.
exactly. Yeah.
And I remember also thinking like, wow, this is somebody who isn't parenting typical children, kids that fit in the box. And I was finding myself struggling with a lot of parenting accounts because all the recommendations and all the stories they would tell, I'm like, that's not how it goes in my house, or that would never work in my house. And I remember kind of like stumbling on your account and being like, wow, oh, like I relate to how you speak about parenting.
Yeah. That resonates, like listening to you.
Yeah, and I remember my therapist telling me very clearly one day, and I think I was talking about how what was wrong with me and how come, whenever I parent, like it doesn't go the way that these like parenting accounts say that it should, right? And I remember him telling me so clearly, he's like, this stuff does not apply to you. You should not follow any parenting accounts. Like it's like apples and oranges. It's just not related to you. So stop putting yourself in that position and getting advice that makes you feel bad about yourself. And I remember hearing
Yeah.
that clearly, and it was so exciting because at that time you were kind of more of a parenting account. I don't think now you've kind of evolved from that.
Yeah.
Were that, and that was like I think one of the only accounts that I felt like I didn't feel shame after reading what
I
you.
think also we bonded over the idea that like we all have some sort of like internal voice. We really have to tap into that. Like nobody really knows what goes on behind closed doors. Nobody really knows what happens with our kids. And like the equation of 1 + 1 = 2, like follow these methods and everything will be nice and dandy. Like that wasn't working for us.
Yeah.
And so I think like we kept talking about we have this internal voice and like if we tap into it, we really know what our kids need. And we should be looking more inwards than outwards.
Right. Like we don't ignore your parenting intuition.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, like my account was like, I feel like it's morphed into a lot of things. It was like, I talked about when my mom died, it was like a grief account. And I did a lot of writing on there. And then it morphed into more of like a parenting account. And now it's totally in a different direction where like I sell Jewish themed sensory kits. So it's gone through a lot.
Well, I just think that it's a testament. I always tell this to you. I'm like, you are good at so many things. And like, I also relate to you in this way also. Like, we're passionate about a lot of different things and about our lives.
Yes.
So it really can take us in so many different directions depending on where we're at in our life, right? Like, I think our accounts reflect where we're at and where our energy is kind of focused in that moment. And that's kind of where it takes us. Does that
I like that.
yeah. Which brings us to why you're here today. Why I really have you on here and what I'm so interested in exploring with you is your connection with God and the ups and downs of that through your grief process in losing your mother. Because I think
Okay.
you have, knowing you more personally. And by the way, our Instagram relationship really morphed into a real friendship because we got to spend time together. You came to us for the holiday of Sukkot twice.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Which,
that
by the way, was we talk about it was like such a leap of faith,
yeah,
like to go from Instagram friends to like real life spending time with each other was huge. It was like a huge leap for both of us. I remember we were talking about it like the first time we spent time together.
yeah.
We were like, we really took a gamble on each other.
I know because online friends don't always translate into real time, face to face friendship. And
Yeah.
I just felt it and I was like, just come. And we both were, we both were really brave
We both jammed.
and it worked
I
out.
really believe in like the idea of soul sisters. Like, I feel like, there's like the family you were born into, and that's something that you can't decide, right? You don't have a choice about that. But I feel like there are those people out there that God put into the world that are just meant to be like your soul sisters, like people that feel like sisters but are not blood related. And I feel like that's what we have.
Yes, I really feel that as well. And I tell people all the time, like, I know that social media and Instagram has a lot of scary aspects to it, and there's a lot of downsides, and we have to be so careful. And at the same time, my experience with Instagram has been such an enhancement to my life because I live in Montana, like far from Jewish community, more insular Jewish communities, and it's a small town. So I am limited in a sense. I have amazing, wonderful friendships here. And I am never like, I don't feel socially deprived at all. But Instagram has allowed me to connect to people that I never would have known. Like, how would I ever know
Yeah.
you existed if not for Instagram? And I feel that way about many people that I've met on Instagram. Like, it's almost like the world becomes more open and bigger when you can connect to people across the world, across the country. And without that, like it's fine, but like I just feel so blessed that I can have so many amazing, interesting people in my life that I love and would never have happened without Instagram. So
Yeah. I love that. I
I
think I've learned from you, like, remember each we're talking about one time, like cultivating your Instagram feed,
yeah,
like
yeah,
having accounts that you love. And I remember thinking like, oh, so much of what I see on my feed is just like it brings me down. Like I don't like it. And I remember that day I went and I unfollowed a ton of people and I followed, like I went on my search bar and I just started following all these accounts that were so fun. And I
mm,
remember thinking like so many times we play victim on Instagram. We're like, oh, Instagram is the worst. We see the worst things. when really like we're in the driver's seat. Like, well, what do you want to see? Who do you want to engage with? What accounts do you want to see? What videos like bring excitement to your life? And like that was big. I started looking forward, like what's going to happen when I get on Instagram today?
What things am I going to see? I really am such a believer of that. Like, first of all, it's in your control. Like, you get to choose, right? And there's,
Remember you used to share your faves? Like what happened to that? Like your interior design
yeah,
favorite like stuff. I look forward to that.
yeah, got to do
Like
that
where did that go?
in a while. I haven't done it in a while. I remember I did like one big one like a few months ago, and now thank you for reminding me. It's got to come back because it also brings me so much joy.
Yes.
And yeah, I talk about like I feel this, and I talk about this a lot with friends of mine about like triggers, right? Like things that trigger us. You're in control of your social media feed, whichever platform you're on. So I always say like a trigger is an opportunity for you to reflect on like what's going on for you. Like if you see
Yes.
something that's triggering, it is not the person who posted's responsibility to worry about that, because or else nobody would ever be able to post anything, because there's everyone's triggered by different things. And I just find that if you take that moment to understand a trigger is like a message to you, what is it that ask yourself why? Like why did that trigger me? And then that helps you kind of work through whatever you need to work through. And at the same time, you don't have to expose yourself to things that are triggering for you.
I know. I feel like you get to choose what battles you want to fight, like internally and also on the internet, right? Like, I think a lot of times we feel like, well, we have to follow parenting accounts because we're parents and we have to hear what the latest is, or we have to follow news accounts, or you don't have to do anything. I know personally, there was a time where I followed a lot of parenting accounts, and that was like incredible for me. I got exposed to really great knowledge. And I'm at a place now where like, I don't feel good hearing other people's advice right now. Like I'm in thick in what I'm doing with my kids, and I really try to listen to my own intuition and I try to grow as a person, but like I don't want the outside noise. And so I don't view my past self as like, "Oh my gosh, why did I follow?" It was like, "No, at that time I needed that, but now I don't want that. I don't need that. And maybe in the future I will again." But like that this is where I'm at now, and I'm going to honor that, and I'm not going to constantly trigger myself by like opening my Instagram and seeing people telling me what to do all the time.
Love that. And I feel that that's what that is a real sign of like inner connection and self awareness. The self awareness of like, what do I need right now? Like, what's important for me right now? So, yeah, of course, there's times when we're looking for outside support and help and ideas. And then there's times where, like, no, that's really triggering. And you need to kind of go quiet, right? Block out the noise and
Exactly, yeah. Like, just go into your safe haven and focus, like, internally. I feel a lot like that's my mode right now, like, really, like, expansiveness inside, like, exploring what I have to offer myself and my family and, like, not taking as much external stimuli in.
it's that's so, so beautiful, and it's such a gift, I find, like, self-awareness and really allowing the ability to really listen to what your intuition is telling you is really such a beautiful thing, and it takes time and practice to get there. I find myself always oh my gosh, I have to tell you a story. Literally happened yesterday in therapy for me. So we're at the end of our session and we're talking about like hard stuff, things that I'm struggling with and realities that I'm resisting against and not wanting to accept it, even though I know in my intellectual brain that like my next step is acceptance, but I'm like in resistance mode a little bit. And so we're at the end of our session and I'm like, any good books you've read so far? And he's like, no, not for you. Like, you are looking for distraction. He's like,
Oh my gosh, that is so fascinating.
there's nothing in the world in a book about parenting, about self-help that you don't know and you haven't read already.
He's like, "Hobby, focus on your own stuff."
And you know what? And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I literally was like so uncomfortable in my body that I was just like, "Okay, I need to read. I need to read somebody else's thoughts and ideas," right?
Mm.
And called me on it. I was like, I could not, and I didn't realize it in the moment what was happening. I was just like, "Yeah, tell me about a good book that I could read." He's like, "No, no, no reading."
So funny because on my nightstand, I always have a pile of books, and it's like graduated into 2 piles. I have like self-help, like growth-oriented books, and then I have like novels.
Mhm.
And for the past, I don't know, a few months, I've opened up the self-help books, read like a few lines that resonated and closed them, but like I can't sit through the whole thing. And then the novels, I'm working through them. I'm happy to read them, but like I don't know. I used to be able to like sit down and absorb information. And right now it's like I'm so sensitive to it. Also, it takes me so long to integrate a small thing that I'll read. I don't want to just read all the information and passively. Like I want to read that one line and think about it for a while. And I feel like there's like a lot more patience. I don't need to get all the information at once. Like I could sit with it and integrate it and like just live my life, you know?
It's really amazing, and I've been noticing about myself, like what I do for distraction and what I do when
Mm.
I'm feeling really uncomfortable. And you would think it's like, wow, this is really positive. Like you want to learn more, you want to read more, you want to hear about you want to hear about growth, and you want to hear about parent. You want to do all those things, but really, what's happening is that it's a distraction from my own pain or my own discomfort, distracting me from what I know what I need to do. But instead, I'm like
Right.
looking to hear, other people's ideas. And it was just like such an aha moment. And I was like, wow, boy, did I just get schooled. Such
Got called out.
a great, and I was like, okay, well, that was like a real wake up message. I'm like, okay. And then you know where your work is, right? Okay. Like I just need
Like
to,
to sit with it. I feel like that is a good bridge into the whole grief conversation. Like, I think a big thing that grief has taught me is like the ability to just sit in the like hard stuff. I think like we live in this world where we're like growth oriented. Like you have to be growth oriented. Where are you going? Where are you headed? Show me your how much you've changed. Show me your progress. And grief has this way of like freezing everything. And like you're not moving forward as rapidly as you were before. It like really causes you to like stop and reflect and do a lot of hard work. And the hard work is not like you're racing down the racetrack. It's like you're sitting in it and you're sitting in the really hard stuff, but that in itself is healing.
100%. It kind of sounds like you almost feel like you're in sometimes in grief, and let me know if this is your experience. It's like you almost feel like you're moving backwards, not only forwards. Or
Mm.
like you're in, I don't know, to me it feels like you're in like the muck of it, right? Like it's sludgy, it's thick.
Yeah. I
And
think also, you know, like when you're racing, you're in the mode and like you're growing and you're doing things and you have these thoughts coming up and you're like, I don't have time for this. Like I need to keep going. Like I'm on and then grief, like those mucky things, they come out pronounced and they're like, we are taking over now. Like you need to pay attention to us. And this is not going to be pretty. This is not going to be like happily ever after. I like the mud idea of like, you're stuck. And like, if you don't deal with it, it just ends up coming to bite you later. So you have to kind of sit with it. And yeah, it's sticky.
yeah, so you lost your mother around 4 years ago?
Yeah.
4 years ago. So if you feel comfortable, can you share where did you find yourself and what kind of take us a little bit on some of that journey, but kind of take us back a little bit to what that was like?
Um, yeah. So my mom died almost 4 years ago. Her yahrzeit is Erev Rosh Hashanah. I think it's a really complicated thing to talk about because losing a mom is a very, very difficult and emotional thing. The huge loss, it's a gaping hole that nobody can replace. But what makes it even more complicated for me was that my relationship with my mom was very difficult. It was very, very difficult. I'm not going to go like incredibly into it, but I'm actually I have a book that is being put out within the next week or so on Amazon. It talks all about my grief journey and my relationship with my mom, her addictions and the emotional manipulation, like a lot of the hard things that happened and grief in general. It's coming out on Amazon. It's called Are You My Mother? A Story of Loss and Love and Loss.
Knew you were writing a book, but I didn't realize it was coming
Yeah,
out.
it's coming out any day. But it was a really difficult relationship. Really, really hard. And about I want to say like a little bit before my mom got sick, it reached the point where I came to the decision that I had to put down really big boundaries. Basically go no contact and really yeah, really give myself that space because trying to work things out and trying to talk things through were backfiring and I started seeing her treat my kids the way she treated me and that was like a hard stop. I was like I am not letting this perpetuate. You know, like I'm trying to be such a different parent to my kids and I can't watch this person. I can't watch my mother do the same like abusive cycle that she did to me to my children. And then, you know, as I came to that decision, she got sick with cancer, and then everything snowballed from there. And within 6 months, she died. But emotionally, I had come to that place of like, I can't have this person in my life anymore. So for her to then die, was very jarring for me because it was almost like I had made the decision to go no contact and I was going to put that into fruition. And then all of a sudden, like no contact was forced upon me, right? Like she's not here anymore. There's no mother there anymore. And so what I really grappled with and I still grapple with is like these two forms of grief. There's like the grief of who my mother was and trying to sift through and find reasons that I do miss her, which is very messy, right? Like there's parts of me that don't miss her. And I've worked through a lot of shame. Like, how could you not miss your mother? Right. But then when I think about how much pain and how difficult the relationship was, I honor that. And I'm like, no, there are parts that I really don't miss. But then there are parts I do miss, just having a mother, like just on Friday, I had this feeling. I was in my kitchen and I was like, oh my gosh, I want to message my mom about something. And I haven't had that thought in a long, long time. And it
Wow.
just came all of a sudden. And I was like, oh, right, she's not around. But then there's the second grief of not having the mother I wish I could have had. You know, while she was alive, I always had this small kernel of hope, like maybe she can change. Maybe if I worded it correctly or if I explained it to her the right way, she would stop doing this emotional manipulation. And
Get
and
better.
now there's no hope for that. There's no hope that she's going to change. There's no that hope of having a mother who actually deeply showed up and cared and made space for who I am. It's not there anymore, And so I feel like there's two journeys of grief that I'm going on: what was and what will never be.
Wow. I mean, as you're speaking, like I actually like feel it in my body. And first of all, thank you so much for really sharing such deep realities of what you experienced and how that shows up for you. And grief is messy. And I feel like there's always so many layers to grief and how you describe the complexity of your grief. Cause it's not only about losing a mother and reality, but there's so much more realities that you've just kind of explained of like, I don't have a mother and she was never even the mother that I had really needed and hoped for. And then it sounds like there was so much shame and guilt kind of weave into that experience. And it's so, I don't know, I just the feeling that keeps coming over me is that it's so brave to even just never mind speak about it out loud, but and write a book about it, which I cannot wait to read. But it's so brave to even stick with yourself through it.
Mm.
Oh, because isn't there, like I just said, we find ways of
Like you're talking to like me for almost 4 years past her death.
yeah.
Like I'm listening to your words and I'm like, oh my gosh, wow. But also like what a journey it took to get to this place that I could honor all the feelings.
But what I see is that, okay, 'cause first of all, this is a really important thing that we all need to recognize that it's not quick, right? Like this is and
Yeah,
it's
let's talk about that. I think about like we could tie in God with this too soon, but like when I think about my mom dying, the first year after she died, I felt anger towards her. It was like the year of anger. It was the year of anger towards God. It was the year of anger towards her. I think finally, like having that physical separation gave me like a bird's eye view of what happens over the past, 28 years. And it finally hit me. Like I remember I had my first therapy session when I was like 9 months pregnant. I had found out that I was pregnant. The next day, I got a letter from my kids' school that COVID was here and the schools were shutting down. And then the week after, I found out that my mom had terminal cancer. So that's how it went down. So then I was not 9 months pregnant and I was like falling apart. And I was like, I need to do therapy. Like I'd always been this like, I'm working on myself. I'm working on myself. Like I'm always trying to be a better person, like I don't really need therapy. I'm so self-aware. And I finally booked a therapy session and I sat at the initial session and I kind of gave a tidbit about my life, like everything that happened in my life. And the therapist just was quiet when I was done. She looked at me. She was like, that's a lot of things for one person to go through. You kind of just like rush through the whole thing. And I think that was like the first moment where I was like, 1 second, like, really? You're saying it was a big deal? Like, I kind of just pushed through the whole thing and told myself it was all my fault and like I was the one who caused it. So like why should I take the time to mourn and accept the magnanimity of everything? And she looked at me and I think that was the first time I was like, 1 second, maybe this is a big deal. Like maybe all the things that have happened over the years are big and I should like pay attention to them and give them space. And so the first year, I just sat with everything and I was like, I'm so angry. I'm so angry that you treated me like this, mom, like that you did all these things. Like I finally sat down and I was like, I didn't deserve this treatment. I didn't deserve all these things. And I almost needed that physical separation. And I know like I've talked to people who have been like, no, but like, how could you think you deserved those things? But what you have to understand is that kids are wired to be attached to their caregivers, right? Like they need their caregivers for physical survival. And so we can't afford to look at our caregivers and say, you are wrong. So if our caregiver like does something wrong, we automatically say we must be to blame. We internalize it because if we're blaming our caregiver, we're literally blaming the person that's like feeding us and providing us shelter. That's too scary. And so a lot of times we end up internalizing it. And so as a child, I internalized, and then into a teenager, I internalized. And even like when I confronted, like when I talked to my mom about her addiction, I was at that point where I thought it was my fault. And when I apologized to her and was like, I'm so sorry if I caused this, she affirmed it. She was like, yes, thank you for saying that. Thank you for apologizing for my. And so that first year, I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't deserve, like, this wasn't all my fault. There was actually like bad things that happened. And it sounds crazy that I'm saying it. Like, of course, bad things happen. But that first year, there was a lot of anger, a lot of anger. And the second year as well, I think it started lessening, but there was like a lot of anger. I feel like I was taking up space for the first time, right? Like all those years that I had tried to like answer back and I had tried to like explain to her that it wasn't my fault or like that I don't like the way she's treating me and got shot down. Now I was like, no, she's not here anymore. I could take up the entire room. I could be upset. I could be mad. I could tantrum. I can cry about, the things that she did. And then I think that towards the end of the second year to the third year, I started making space for her again. I really started trying to hear her story. I really started trying to understand that she had gone through even worse things than I did and having compassion for her from like a real place. Another crazy thing that happened was like I had her voice in my head for 2.5 years. Whenever I did something wrong, I would have her voice in my head telling me off. And it wasn't like a voice I could turn off. And it took around 2.5 years to like separate my identity from hers. And I feel like the anger was like what fueled that process. Like I was finally like being my own person without being shot down. So I think the third year was a lot about having compassion for her, but also recognizing that I didn't deserve what happened. And this year, I have to say, has probably been the biggest healing year. I think I finally been tapping into the idea that I'm worthy, despite having, a loved one who said she loved me but treated me badly. I am worthy of love. I can trust people. It's very hard to like hear somebody say they love you and then do bad things. It messes up the whole idea of trust, right? It's like, what is trust? Can I trust people? They say that they love me, but then they do bad things. And so I feel like there's been a lot of expansiveness this year in my grief. Like I'm able to really own my identity. I'm able to really own what happened to me without kind of putting a pointing finger. Like I'm not looking at it anymore and being like, I that was horrible. Like, why did that have to happen? There's like this acceptance of like, no, that happened. That happened. And it wasn't okay, but it happened. And recently, I've even been able to tap into this idea that, like, I can show gratitude to God for the mother he gave me because I do think that my mother at her core was an incredible person. There was like glimmers of who she really wanted to be at certain points. And I do believe that she was a beautiful person at some level, deep inside, and she chose what she wanted to do in life. Her actions and the pain that she caused, that was her choice, but God gave her to me as a mother for a reason. And like when I do certain things, when I'm strong emotionally and I exude that strength, like that's from my mom. She was a strong woman. And like if I when I turn to like arts, and I make these sensory kits and I paint and I write and I feel my mom inside of me. Like that's who she was, at her core. And the past few years, I wasn't able to look at a picture of her from when I was like about a teenager until early adulthood. Like I couldn't look at a picture of her. It was too painful. I could look at like early childhood pictures of like me laughing and her laughing and I felt that joy. But when I would see pictures of like more recently, I would quickly shut them down. Like it was so painful to look at her face and think about the pain of like once I wasn't a little child and I started like understanding what she was doing, like the knowledge, you can't erase that anymore. And just recently, I started like looking at pictures of her and like being able to look at them and not shake and like shut down. And so I feel like this past year has been this like year of expansiveness. I'm just able to like accept the suffering and accept what happened and accept who she was and honor that experience as well as like making room for my own happiness, and like really being like I deserve to have a happy life even though she struggled with that. Like I deserve to be happy.
Wow. I mean, there's so many. First of all, like I'm in awe of that process. And going back to what I said before, like what the word brings up for me is brave because I feel many people get stuck in that anger phase and that anger phase kind of then dictates rightfully so. Like everybody's journey is different, but that anger kind of dictates how they see life and how it's so easy in the scenario that you just described to get really stuck in that victim, like,
Yeah. I
and
think that's like what my mom struggled with. I think like she really went through really, really bad things. And I think that you have that choice to like either go to the pain and see what it tells you or to shut it behind a closed door and lock it. And she locked it. She put it behind a door and she put a lot of locks on it. But the problem is that it's so easy to get triggered. There's like so many like I run a business, right? So there's like tags. Like if you put up like a sensory kit for a Shavuot sensory kit, right? So you're gonna write tags like Shavuot, gardening, Judaism, sensory kits, right? So there's so many tags that are linked to that door. And so like the second someone does something that reminds you of that memory behind that closed door, you get triggered. But you don't want to open that door. So you take all that pent up anger, and you take all that pent up frustration and fear, and you throw back on the person that triggered you because it's so scary to open that door. It really it's like you feel like you're not going to survive if you open that door. It's like a survival thing.
but you did, right? So your mother responded to all of the terrible pain and suffering that she had in the way that she did, which ended up kind of perpetuating a negative cycle and hurting the people that she did love. And you, it almost like you, like, people talk about breaking the cycle, like you literally did that. You took that anger and that pain, and instead of shutting it away, you sat with it and you lived with it. And that's why I keep saying it's so brave because it's so scary to enter this big black to me it's like I imagine it like a big black hole of grief and anger. And
Yeah.
it just kind of it's a vortex that can just like suck you in. And
Yeah.
I feel like that's why so many people just either like shut the door and pretend that they're okay, or then they perpetuate that and they live very bitterly and everything
Mm,
in the through the lens of this narrative, right? This narrative that's true, but it's a narrative that I'm not deserving or so many bad things happen to me that I can't move forward. And I don't know, like kind of like what your therapist's reaction, like, I don't know, like that takes so much strength to be in the anger and the grief, to feel it. And at the same time, it didn't swallow you to the point where now you were perpetuating that same cycle. You sat with it and let it play out until it brought you to this next stage. And you described this journey so beautifully of like where the anger, year by year, like where you found yourself. And when you think about it, it's really, I know that's not necessarily how you feel about it, but it really is quite awe-inspiring to hear your story. Touch
thank you. I think I'm like working like as I'm listening to you, I'm like breathing and being like accept what she has to say. For a lot like for me personally, it's so hard to like accept like whatever, like that's life. Like you just do the work. I'm
like
like taking a deep breath and being like, no, like absorb what Javi's saying. Like accept, say thank you and accept the compliment and accept that you did do a lot of hard work. And that's what's happening for me right now. I'm like, okay, just say thank you and like really like breathe in what she's telling you.
and you're easy to what? To like push it away? Like what is your
I
body
think it's hard to take compliments. I think my whole life was survival. Like when bad things were happening and I had to call for help and I had to like be the adult in the room. It was like if no one else then who? Like of course I have to be the adult. Of course I have to be the one, right? Like could you tell I'm an oldest, right? So I think when people say things like that I'm like, but of course like I don't have another choice. Like of course I have to push through, but I think you're saying like no, it's a choice. You don't have to push through. You could just decide to give up or get swallowed by the grief or become bitter. And I think that a big thing that I keep in mind is like my mother was really unhappy, and that was something I absorbed growing up. She really had a hard time being happy. And I know that I don't want that kind of life for two reasons. For my own self, I want to have a happy life. I want to be happy in life. But number two, I want it for my kids because when kids grow up with unhappy parents, they absorb that. They feel like they're the issue, like they're the source of their parents' unhappiness. And so I want to live a happy life for them too. Like I want them to see a happy mother, a mother who is happy to see them and happy to live life and laughs, and they don't have to walk they don't have to live walking on eggshells. I remember growing up being picked up from school, and this is like a very painful memory. I would look at the other mothers picking up their kids, and in my heart I would beg one of them to take me home. I'd be like, I don't want to go home. I Someone else take me home. Take me anywhere but home. And recently I had an appointment and I wasn't home when my kids came home. My husband like does carpool, he brings the kids home, and I was that day I came home and I was just telling my husband, like, I don't know, like, I don't feel like I'm being a great mom lately. Like, I don't feel it. And like, I'm just snapping and this and that. And he looks at me and he's like, do you know what happened when we pulled into the driveway and your car wasn't there? I was like, what happened? He's like, the kids lost it. They lost it. They were like, mommy's not here. Mommy's not here. Like, I came home and she's not here. He's like, you don't realize how much you mean to them. And I think honestly, I'm scared sometimes to admit, like, I don't want to mean so much to my kids because my mom hurt me so much that it's like, I don't want to mean that much to my kids. I'm scared. I'm scared of that responsibility. But on the other hand, he was like, you mean so much to them. Like they came home and fell apart because you weren't there for a few, like you were going to be here in 15 minutes, but they were like holding on the whole car ride to see you. And I was like, wow, I mean that much.
Well, that's a really, really, really powerful story because it's literally illustrates the cycle that you broke. You did that. And I want to go back to your reaction before about me telling you how big of a deal it is with what you did. And you said with your own words, I'm reflecting back to you that my mom had a choice, right? To behave a certain way. Yeah, she had horrible things happen to her, but she chose, right? It was her choice. She chose to deal with it in this way. And the same goes for you. You had a lot of bad things happen to you, and you chose to deal with it in a way that you dealt with it. And so just like your mom had the choice, you had the choice, and you deserve
Mm,
you deserve credit for that choice. You could have easily made a different choice, especially because that's what was modeled to you.
yeah. It's funny because growing up, like I even tell my husband sometimes, how am I going to know? How am I going to be a good parent? How am I going to be a good mom? I wasn't modeled that. So how am I going to know? You know what I'm saying? And then I always come back to like, what was it like growing up? What were the things that I wish I could have had? And this is something I think about all the time. I think a lot of times, like people who come from hard childhood, they're like, I'm not going to be my mom. I'm not going to be my mom, or I'm not going to be my dad, or I'm not going to be like whatever, figure caused me so much pain. And they go into parenting, but what they don't realize is that they're coming from like a very egocentric place. They're like, I don't want to do whatever happened to me. So whatever triggered me, I'm not going to do to my kids. And then a lot of times for my mom, I feel like there was like a lot of physical harmful things that happened to her. And so going into her parenting, she was like, I'm not going to physically do harmful things. But like when you go in only thinking about the things that were triggering for you kind of miss the mark that you're parenting kids that are different than you and like other things are important to them. So something that I kept in mind a lot is like I have to look back at my childhood and think about all the things that were so difficult for me and caused me so much anguish, and I have to give them to myself. I have to heal myself in that way. I have to be that mom to myself and be like, you felt like you weren't seen. I'm going to see you now. I'm going to be that mom to you. You felt like all the things that I struggled with, I'm going to give to myself now. And then I'm going to come to my kids and I'm going to be like, hey, what do you guys, right? Like you might not need the same things I needed. So I'm not coming and trying not to be my mom. My mom is not even in the equation. That equation is when it comes to me, right? There's so many wounds that I have to like sit with and mother myself over. But when it comes to my kids, my mom is not in the equation. I'm not trying to not be my mom. I'm trying to be a mother to my kids. And each kid is going to need something else. Like I have one kid who like she just needs love and attention. I mean, all kids do, but like those like very sensitive kids who like they just want you to hold them and they want you to talk to them no matter how old they are. They really just they want your physical presence, right? And then I have like another kid who loves games and books and like wants to connect like that. Like they don't want the DMC deep conversations. They just want like to play games with them and have lighthearted conversation. And so that's something that I've really kept in mind. I want to see my kids for who they are, like I really want to tap into like what each one needs and see them individually while also honoring that that little girl inside of me also needs tending and she also needs attention, right? And like that's a separate project of mine, like side project. We'll take care of you too at some point.
Well, I actually want to speak to that for a second. I want to pause right here because I think you said something really powerful, and I want to absorb it for myself because it's something that is easy to get lost in translation. But recognizing that, I just love what you said about asking your kids, like, "Hey, what do you need?" And even if they can't tell it to you with words, they tell it to you with their personality and with their action
Hmm.
listening, you can really be there. But if you're so absorbed in what you said, like, oh, I'm just not going to be my parent and I'm going to make sure that my kids get what I didn't have. And then sometimes you miss the boat because you're forgetting that it's not about you in that moment. It's about how are you going to show up for your child in the way that they need. And it's so powerful. It's so hard. And what I'm thinking about as you speak, it's like, okay, well, you're having to reparent yourself, right? At the same
Yeah.
as you're a mom. Like you're not doing this as single on your own. You have all the time in the world to reparent yourself. Like you are finding yourself reparenting yourself at the same time as actually being a parent to 5 kids, right? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Thank God. There's this meme that I saw one time that really spoke to me. It was like this mother, and with one hand, she's like pushing back the generations before her. And then with the other hand, she's like holding her children close. And I remember thinking about, like, I think about it all the time. I'm like, they both take equal strength, right? Like, there's one hand, like, there were years where physically, like, I heard my mother's voice in my head telling me to do things, almost like, well, this is what I did to you. So this is the way you should treat your kids. And it took so much mental strength to be like, I'm not doing that. I'm shutting you down, right? And so then you look at your kids and you think it's so natural to like want to bring them close and want to, and but it's not. It's really hard work to show up for your kids. And so I always think about that, like it's you're fighting the battle on both fronts. You're constantly trying to not perpetuate what happens, but also like meet your kids where they're at.
So, how did you do it? I mean, how do you still do it? Like, what does it look like to I think everyone and everyone has their struggles and everyone has their battles and their wounds, right? And but
Yeah.
here about your story. Well, I think it's even there's a third thing that's going on here. You're holding the previous generations away, right? You're bringing your child close, and then you have what you have to do for yourself at the same time, right? So there's really
Yeah.
things happening here at the same time, which all take an immense amount of strength.
Yeah, I think a few things are coming up. I think like number one, it's really exhausting emotionally and physically, and I think I've learned that the people that I let into my life have to be cheerleaders. I think a big thing that I got in inheritance from what my relationship with my mom was being a people pleaser and feeling like I had to please everyone and I had to like constantly like evaluate what would make people happy and and kind of like put out all the fires in the room. And I carried this weight on my shoulders for a very long time. And I think recently I've really the more that I view myself as important, right? And that I'm deserving of things, the more I've realized that I can be kind to people, but I can also have boundaries, right? I don't have to be rude to people, but I don't have to let everybody into my inner circle. And I don't have to give everybody the care and attention that I have inside of me. And so, something that I've really worked on, and I've been really blessed with, thank God, is a really good inner circle of people, soul sisters, if you will, that are cheerleaders and that really believe in me and are honest with me, if they think there's something up. And I think that that's so important, like taking responsibility for who you let into your life, like into like the vulnerable part of your life. That's something grief really taught me to be vulnerable. I was never vulnerable. I remember like the day my mom was dying, someone called me to see how I was. And I turned the conversation around to see how they were. And I remember it to this day. I was like, why couldn't I have taken that person's care and like enveloped myself with it and been like, thank you so much for calling. But I felt so uncomfortable hearing someone care about me. And I was like immediately like, no, I have to care about you. And I think about that all the time. Like I've really opened my arms to allowing people to be there. and not just trying to take care of everyone. And that's been like hugely healing for me to be surrounded by good aura and like, good energy and people who really care about you. Like we've had this hobby where like you've called me and I've been like, oh my God, like I needed your call so bad. Right. Or I'll call you and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I'm having such a day. Right. Like just supporting each other and like listening. Like I feel like I really have that in my life, you know? That's number one. Number two, I do want to say I think my relationship with God has really carried me through. I think that's really allowed me to be at the place that I am and also give me the strength to continue to better myself and be a good person and grow and I don't know, accept the strengths that he's given me and accept my weaknesses and have compassion for myself. So this is gonna get a little messy, but I think it's the whole process idea of like, I think a lot of times we're like, we're gonna work on ourselves and we're gonna reach the end goal. And like my process with God is still ongoing. And it was like a very painful 4 year journey. And it wasn't like, okay, like everything is going to be good. It was like really raw.
But that's I don't know, I feel like that's where the beauty is. Like, that's where it's at. I don't know, we talked about this, recently, like,
Yeah.
that struggle that we have with God, to me, that in itself is part of our connection and our service, is in
Yeah.
that messy struggle. It's not like, "Oh, I have a relationship with God only once I get to this place where it's that I love him and it's like a love fest," right? No, like the relationship with God is in the like to me, I guess at least that's what I tell myself because that's kind of been my experience too. It's like it's the muck, it's the questions, it's the resentment, it's the why are you doing this to me? And it's in all of that messiness is where we find our deepest connection and our service.
Oh my gosh, that resonates so much. I have a story to tell you. So a while ago, we were having trouble financially and we were waiting for our tax return to come. And we didn't know what it was going to be, right? Like your tax return could be like whatever. We had no idea. And I remember like having a day where I was super anxious, just shaking and like could not get these anxious thoughts out of my head. And I'm sharing with you because you actually introduced me to the woman sitter. You like shared with me that someone gave it to you as a present. And like I recently bought like a bunch. I've like been giving them out to friends as presents. Like I'm obsessed with it. And it's helped me like open up prayer again and like praying to God, right? Which I wasn't doing for many years. And so I remember like sitting with myself and I'm like, you know what? This whole like think that it'll be good and like everything will be fine. I can't connect to that right now. So I'm going to open up the sitter and I'm going to connect to God through my anxiety because that's where I'm at right now. I'm so anxious. That's how I'm going to show up. And so I took out the sitter and I started praying. And I told God, I was like, I am so anxious right now. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm having such a hard time. And I really just shared with him where I was at. And I remember at the end feeling like this sense of peace and feeling like, you know what, God, whatever you send, I'm opening my hands to. I'm opening my hands and maybe you'll put something good in there. Maybe it won't look good, but like I'm so open to what you're going to send and I feel at peace. You have my good intentions in mind. It might not be with this tax return. It might be, I don't know. I'm not saying it has to be a certain way. And I was reflecting like a few years ago, my relationship with God was so transactional. It was like, oh my gosh, I need Hashem to give me money. So I'm going to go pray to him to get brownie points so that I can cash in and get the money from him. Be like, remember I prayed to you. I deserve for you to give me something good. And it was so like checks and balances. Like I have to do what you're telling me to do or else something bad's going to happen. But also like I'm going to do good things so that you can do good for me and I almost like don't want to see the ending of the story because it almost like cheapens it. But like my husband came home a few minutes after I prayed and he was like, you're never gonna believe this. We got like a really big tax return, a lot bigger than we both expected. And I remember thinking, like, if I would have prayed to God from this place of checks and balances, okay, I prayed to you, you owe me, then it would have been all about me. I brought this upon myself. I brought this money because I prayed, but it wasn't about me at all. I came to God with anxiety. I didn't even come to Him like believing that things were going to be good. I came to Him where I was and I left with this faith and I opened my hands. I said, put whatever you want into my hands and I will take it. And he happened to put something that was good for me. And I think,
It was different.
yeah, I would have been fine. Like I remember thinking like, thank you, Hashem. And also, even if you didn't give it to me, I would have said thank you to you.
Wow. I mean, that is one of the most powerful stories that I ever heard. And it lands for me as well. I get asked a lot about think good, it will be good on my life's trajectory and how life didn't turn out at all the way that I expected. And I don't have biological children. And there's been a lot of challenges and a lot of beauty and a lot of challenges wrapped up in my story as well. And people say, like, feel about this concept of think good and it will be good. And for me, the journey has been good for who, right? Do you decide what's good?
Right.
And to me, for me, I guess part of it was to reconcile my journey. But for me, it's like, I believe that, and also this didn't happen in an instant, it happened over many years of questions and struggles and anger and hurt and resentment. And through it all, obviously there was the foundation of faith and acceptance of God.
Yeah.
You know,
I
that
feel like it's holding two truths. Like you can really believe in God and know where you're headed and like know that you want to believe on a certain level that God is going to send you good. But you might not be there in that moment.
and to what you've just described, and I feel like it really speaks to how I feel about think good and it'll be good. It's like you open yourself up and you decide that what Hashem is going to give you is good, irregardless of how it might feel to you in the moment.
Hmm. Yeah.
If you come at this relationship with God, like I am struggling, I have anxiety, I am worried about what the future is, whether it's financially or health wise, or whatever you're struggling with, and your service is I'm not coming to you with think all these positive affirmations and it's going to be exactly how I want it to be, and I'm praying that it should come turn out exactly as I want it to be. The prayer that I feel is so powerful is this, like, I'm actually uncertain of how I'm going to figure this out. I have a lot of anxiety around this, and I'm coming to you to pray to you and to tell you that I'm worried, right? And also, I believe and I will accept what you believe is good for me.
Yes. And I think it's a lot more authentic that way. We're coming to Hashem with like our rawness and like our humanness, and we're like experiencing it with him, like we're letting him in with us. And then we're coming to this place afterwards of like, okay, now that you've sat with me, like now I feel heard. I feel like you're with me in this and like I could rely on you now. But I feel like we need those reminders sometimes. Like we're not Sadiq and we're not always like functioning on this level of like, and I believe everything will be fine. And I think like,
A lot of times, like I say, a lot of times things are not fine,
yeah,
right? They're not fine.
yeah,
They're not okay.
yeah.
Through the struggle, but it doesn't necessarily, and for everyone's journey is different, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have disconnected from God. If you feel like life could be hard and you can and not fine and still have this relationship with God in a very, unique way. Which brings me to another question slash comment. Do you think to get to this place where we're having this kind of dialogue with God, right? And we're accepting of him, that anger needs to come first.
I think in my journey it did. I honestly spent I can't speak for everyone. I think also it depends like how much you allowed yourself to be honest with God. I think the first time I ever felt angry to God was when my mother got sick with cancer. I don't think I ever was angry with him before that. I felt like it was very much this relationship of like I have to listen to God or else. And I remember during COVID, I was home with all my kids, so sickly pregnant. I was throwing up all over the place. And I remember I would run outside during the day for like 2 minutes at a time to get a breath of fresh air. And I call them coffee dates with God. And I would yell at him and I would be so angry. And I'd be like, God, why are you doing this? Why are you making her so sick? And why are you making it so hard? And she gets better and then she gets worse. And then she gets like and I was so upset. And it was the first time I ever was angry at God. And I remember the morning after she died, I woke up and I was so angry. I was like, seriously, you want me to say my Da'ani to you? You want me to say thank you to you? When you just did that yesterday? I sat in my bed, I was like dumbfounded. I could not grasp the idea that Hashem wanted something for me the day after my mother died. And I was so angry. And I sat in the bed. I literally told Hashem, Javi, I was like, that's it. No more coffee dates with you. I'm not talking to you. I'm done. I'm not talking to you. I don't know how long this is going to last, but I'm having a big tantrum. I'm really mad. And I didn't talk to God for like almost 2 years. I I didn't have any coffee dates with him. And like metaphorically speaking, during those 2 years, I kept like peeking behind the curtain, like, what's going on? And God was sitting at the table in the coffee shop and he was like, I'm here when you're ready. And I was like, seriously, you're still there? Like, I haven't visited you in so long. What are you still doing there? And he's like, I'm just here. I'm not going anywhere. And I think I almost like it really mirrored my relationship with my mom. Like the no contact with my mom, the no contact with God, it brought me to this place of like, I'm having a tantrum and God still cares about me. Like he's still sitting at the coffee table with his cold coffee, waiting for me to sit with him and talk to him. That was like, it really threw me for a spin. It was like, you really do care about me, even when I'm not doing everything you want me to do. And
Wow.
I feel like the anger, like it brought me to this place of like really feeling like Hashem could handle it. Hashem was able to handle my anger for so long. And ironically, the only thing I did those 2 years was thank God. I wasn't able to pray to him. I wasn't able to ask him in times of need, but I was able to say thank you. Like when things happened, I'd be like, thank you, Hashem, for doing this. But I wasn't able to have a conversation with him.
Thank you for this little thing you did for me, but I still don't forgive you, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like it was like pent up all the years of our relationship where I felt like I was just forced into it and like I just had to do things for him. I felt like I needed to have this almost like rebellion, right? Like this teenage rebellion. Like I'm so angry at you of all the things you did to me, of all the things you did growing up to me. I had so much anger. So, like when you're saying, do you need anger to connect with God? I feel like you need honesty with God. You need to be honest with Him how you're feeling. And I don't think your anger has to dictate how you act, right? But I do think the more honest we are with God about how we're feeling, the deeper the connection is. Like think about vulnerability. The people you have real relationships with are the people that you strip off all your masks and your facade and you are real with them and you really tell them how you feel about things. And I feel like that's what God wants from us. He wants to be with us when we're in the muck and when we're stuck and when we don't want to talk to him and when we're angry. And he also wants to be with us when we're praying to him and we believe in him. Like I really believe he wants to be there for all of it.
what you're saying is, I don't know, I almost feel like this podcast is for me because it's like what you're saying is like so resonant for me right now and so many of the things that I need reminding of and because I've had kind of an interesting journey myself and for me like when I got the diagnosis of permanent infertility with my husband and I together. I was so young. I was 22. I don't think I properly even sat with that,
Like grieved.
grieved and even had any dialogue with God about it besides for like I went like straight. This is why I asked the question about the anger because I feel like I went straight to the acceptance.
Like to the action mode of like, what do we do about it?
How am I going to have a family and okay God, if this is what you want from me, fine. I'll find a way by hook or by crook to live my life in the best possible way. And I think there's a lot of positives to that. But later on, as I got older, like you said, it comes back. Like if you don't deal with that grief, I found myself 10 years later having to address, first of all,
Mm.
that grief. And second of all, that anger towards God, you know?
Yeah. Also, it's not linear. Like maybe you did really accept it when you were younger. Like maybe you truly did. And you had no anger then. But now you're 10 years older and you're reprocessing it and you feel anger now. I just feel like our relationship with God is not linear and it's not meant to be. Like we're human and we could get angry at things that happened 10 years ago and reopen that. Be like, take that file down from the shelf. We're opening it now. Where we need to talk about this.
Agree with that because like I feel like I did the best with what my capacity was and what I had to deal with. And I also think that at that young age I didn't know how to grieve. Like I didn't know what grief meant,
Mhm.
you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
I was upset and I was sad and I cried and I had bad days, but it wasn't grieving with your whole body, and with like I didn't know what that was like. I didn't know what that felt like. I didn't know how to do it, right? But as I got older and I had more awareness of who I was and my body and therapy, like I did go backwards into that process. And I also do feel like being honest and vulnerable and saying, like, no, that wasn't fair, God. That was below the belt, like that, and kind of have that vulnerable conversation with him allows for a deeper connection, and an honest connection, like you spoke about, an honest connection. And I think we were just talking recently, and I'm kind of in this little stage right now of rejecting the realities that God is putting in front of me. I'm like, no, I don't want this. No, thank you. Like,
Yeah.
oh, you think you could just give me whatever you want and I'm just going to accept it? It's almost like I don't want to give God the joy of my acceptance. Like that means he wins.
Mm,
Like if I accept, it's like, you're not getting that out of me. You're not getting acceptance out of me. That's not fair. And do I know that in my head that this is such a kind of silly, comical conversation with him? Yes, but that's where the honesty is, right? That's where the vulnerability.
yeah. Also, like, can we talk about that sometimes we're just tired at what God sends? Like, we're just tired sometimes. We're like, stop sending the shipments. The port is closed. Please do not send anything else. Right?
Yeah. And like telling God, like, no, I'm actually like at capacity. But I also know like it's very interesting. As soon as I allowed myself to be like, no, thank you. I don't want it. I don't accept. I have resistance. I did feel a softening, right? I did feel like there was a little bit more space for me to lean into a little bit more of the acceptance and the relationship.
Because you took up some space,
Ah,
right? You were like, I'm also here.
yeah. 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 So, I mean, I think what I really, really want people to hear and want people to come away with is that number one, God can handle us, right? God can handle our anger. God can handle our tantrums.
Exactly. But I think it's also important to know where you're headed. It wasn't like I was angry with God and I was like, I never want to talk to you again. It was almost like I need to feel this anger in order to feel close to you. I think it's important to know where you're headed. Like a lot of the decisions I've made with my relationship with God is always like, okay, this is where I'm at now, but I really do want to grow. Like I do want to have a closer relationship with you. I do want to do more of what you're asking me. I'm not there yet. So can you have compassion and accept me for who I am now? But also I have the accountability that like tomorrow I want to try more and I want to do more. And I do feel like my relationship with God is so much deeper because I allowed the anger, but also because I took that step. There was a day where like all of a sudden I felt called to open up a sitter. And I had that little voice inside of me that was like, no, but you don't pray. That's the label you've given yourself. Like, don't do that. Right. And then I was like, no, but why did I take the stance of not praying? What was the point of that? The point of that was to feel anger and to like really take up space in the relationship. How am I feeling today? I'm feeling like I really want to talk to God about something. So can I take that label off of not praying and can I open that prayer book and Dobbin just today, you know?
Right. And oh, that is so powerful. And like also like don't put yourself in a box where it's like you now have a label and now you're stuck in that narrative,
Right.
right? That
Yeah.
beautiful nuanced point that is so important. It's like, okay, this is how I feel today, or this is what my relationship with God is right now, or I don't feel
Yes.
I want to talk to him yet. I love that you added that the yet, but you don't necessarily have to close yourself off for good. When you leave that door open to be like, this is where well, it's also a lot about being present, right, in the moment and just really being intentional about where you are right now and being honest. Where, like, right now, this is where I am right now. I don't feel so and so yet. And what's so beautiful about that is that it allows us to be fluid, right? And grow and have a whole different myriads of experiences instead of being labeling ourselves and being, I'm the person that doesn't dot dot dot, or I'm the person that
Yeah.
doesn't pray. And then all of a sudden you being called to pray and you're like, wait a second, I don't pray, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I really like I connect to what you're saying a lot. Like it doesn't have to be a label. We don't have to close ourselves off. And also like it's a relationship. Like think about your spouse. Like I know with my spouse, like you have good days and you have bad days. And it doesn't take away from the relationship. It's not like when you're having a bad day, like, okay, we're not in a relationship anymore. It's like, no, we're in a relationship that sucks right now. We're going through a really rough time, but we're still in this relationship. And like the next day it's good. And you're like, oh my gosh, we got through it, you know, and we're still here. And I feel like when we really take the reins on our relationship with God, instead of just accepting as something we're forced into, but instead we view it as like we have the privilege to have a relationship with God. This is our privilege. What are we going to do with it? What type of relationship do we want? Right? Like the same with our kids. Like it's not like they owe us something. Like they're our kids. And so therefore they have to have a good relationship with us. Like, no, I'm the parent. What do I want to pour into this? What type of relationship do I want it to be?
Wow, that's really powerful. And it's so beautiful, and it's so you connect it in a way of like, what's my role and ownership in this relationship, right? Not
Yeah.
expecting or feeling that you're owed or deserved a certain type of relationship, but what am I putting into this relationship so it could flourish, and it could have its ups and downs, and it could be, but you're really having that self-awareness of like, what do I want from this relationship and how am I going to show up?
Yeah. And I think cycling back, I'm thinking about why I started talking about God. You asked me, like, what gives you the strength to have a different narrative than what you grew up? And I said, God. I think the way that I was treated by God when I had my tantrum, I was at my lowest point and I didn't feel like God gave up on me. I actually felt like he supported me and he stayed there the entire time. I think that taught me a lot. And that gave me a lot of strength. It was like, if God could believe in me, even when I'm at my lowest, then I can also believe in myself, right? And I can also believe in my kids when they're at their low. When I could believe in my kids when they're at their lowest, right? Like it really gave me this belief of like I can have the strength to pull myself out. I could have the strength to stand by my side when I have messy days, when I have good days, because God had the capacity to do that for me. I'm deserving of that. If He thinks I'm deserving of goodness and of trust, then I can give that to myself as well.
So do you think that you learned trust from God? Because you didn't learn, like how you explain, like how do you trust when the person who says they love you the most acts in a very scary, unhealthy, hurtful way? So where do you learn trust? Right? How do you know? Like, do you think that you learned the trust from God?
I think that my relationship with God was like the impetus for me to try to trust again, right? I can't say like it was just given to me. I think it's been like a very rough journey to like test the waters with people and be like, can I trust this person? But I do think he gave me the impetus to be like, no, try it again. There are other people out there. And I think it's been a lot of trial and error to be vulnerable with people and to be open. And there are people who are there and who are willing to accept it. And there are people who will throw it back in your face, and do hurtful things. And I've come to realize that the world is messy and it doesn't have to be black and white. There's people you can trust and who can be in your court, and there are people who are not, and they're not bad. They're not your people.
You really have to, like, back to that word of bravery, like, when you have a narrative of trust being precarious, to be able to try again is very
Yeah. Even like I have this thing like with my kids, if I had a really messy day with them, like I didn't show up well, I used to sit in my bed and ruminate, go through the whole day and go through everything. And now I don't do that anymore. I sit down and I'm like, today was a really messy day. I did not show up. And I hold myself accountable. And I also have compassion. I'm like, okay, it was a messy day because of X, Y, and Z, but also like you messed up today. But then I tell myself, but I trust in myself that I'll show up tomorrow. It'll be a new day and I'll bring in new energy. And I have that trust in myself, right? Like instead of like when you shame yourself and you're like, I'm such a bad parent, I'm such a bad parent, you're taking that energy into the next day. And it's like, if I'm such a bad parent, how can I do a good job? But when we say like, I had a hard day today and I really messed up, but I also believe in my goodness and I trust in my goodness and I'm going to tap into that tomorrow. You come in with a different energy.
I don't think you realize all the amazing things that come out of your mouth.
Okay. You're making me so uncomfortable. But also, like, kudos to you. Like, I just feel like there are certain people you have conversations with and the best of you comes out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, they bring out the best in you. I feel like that. Like, you bring out the best in me when we chat in our friendship.
Thank you. I feel like that is something that I could really put into practice more. First of all, owning the messy days and really just sitting in the uncomfortableness of it and believing in my goodness. That is something that I really, really want to absorb and try to practice because it is messy. Like you said, the outside world is messy. Our inner worlds are messy. And I find myself sometimes resisting the mess. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't want it to be hard anymore. I just don't want it to
Yeah.
be like, why can't just something be easy, you know? And
Yeah.
I don't know, I think with most things, like when we have the inspiration or the ability to have like a little bit of a narrative shift and the way we talk to ourselves, it really makes a big difference slowly but surely. Like you start to send yourself different messaging. I think is so powerful. So
Yeah. I feel like we have to be our biggest cheerleaders.
truly, truly. And I think it's hard to be
It's very hard.
even in experiencing in this podcast, like we have a hard time like accepting compliments and understanding like the magnitude of what we've accomplished. And, you
You
know,
took the words right out of my mouth. I was just thinking of that word. Yeah. I think, yeah, we have a hard time acknowledging that
I think it also
we're working.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
related to what you said earlier in the podcast where you said, "Well, what was my choice?" You're like, "Oh my gosh, that was really amazing," or "How did you do that?" And the reaction is like, "What was my choice? I did what I had to do."
Yeah. You know what? I feel a big shift. Like it's funny you mentioned that. I think like growing up, I didn't feel like I had a choice. I felt like I had to keep everything together. But I feel like now I wake up every day and I'm like, I have a choice. I I live in a safe home. I love being in my house, right? And I please God, I'm raising a safe environment for my kids too, and I'm choosing that every day, and that's so powerful. Like not to be a victim anymore, not to play victim, and to wake up every morning and be like, no, I'm choosing this. I'm choosing to be strong today, right? Or I'm choosing to act in healthy ways or to be happy. That's so much more powerful than being like I was forced into it, you know?
Yeah, because I had that experience before where I tell my story and it depends, but when people say, "Oh my gosh, like you're so amazing. How did you do it?" And my gut reaction is to reject it, right? To be like, "No, like we did what anyone would do, right? Like what are you going to do in this situation?"
Yeah.
And it's so much more powerful to own it, right? And
Yeah.
I actually chose I made a conscious decision to choose happiness, right?
Yeah.
I
I love that.
made a conscious choice to like, I want to live a full life, even with all the obstacles and the barriers and all the things that can trip me up. I choose joy. Now, does that mean I'm joyous and happy every single day of my life? No.
No,
But
but that's where you're headed.
that's how I want to live my life. I don't want to be a victim. I don't want to be miserable. I don't want my challenges and my struggles to define me. I want
Yeah.
to pass them. And
I
so
That resonates so much. I think a lot of times, like when people know me, they don't know my whole story. And I almost don't want them to know. Not because I'm hiding it, but it's also like I'm so much more than that. That's something that happened before, but I didn't have control over that. That wasn't something I would have chosen if I had the choice. I'm so much more than my hardships. If anything, I want to be defined by the joy that I've chosen in my life and the good decisions I've made, despite all the things that happened. So that really resonates for me. Like I'm more than just the hard things I've been through.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap up. And I think by telling your story in the way that you did, and obviously it's just a little snippet of your life, but I think the way you told your story and what you shared, the message is you are so much more than your circumstances and the choices that you made and the way in which you chose to lead your life and the guidance that you gave yourself and the goals that you put in front of you. It's still going on, right? It's a journey and it's like you said, it's not linear and it's not a quick, nothing happens in an instant or a quick fix, but you had a goal. You have a goal in mind, right? And I feel like the way that you navigate that and in the light in which you do, the message to me, and no one is going to go come away with like, oh boy, this person's defined by her struggles. It's to me, it's like, wow, like transcendent. To me, the word is like transcendence, transcended and live with at the same time your life and your journey and the choices that you make and more than the choices that you make, but the reasons behind the choice, I think are
Mm.
why it's like we all make choices. But I think what's so powerful about your story and that kept coming up over and over again in our conversation is why you made the choices that you made. And that is very powerful. So
Thank you.
thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing so vulnerably and for just, you're such a beautiful light. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Javi.
I'm so excited that this episode is finally out in the world. You have heard it, and I finally get to talk about it with you guys. I've been sitting on this episode and what we talked about for so long that there were so many things that I wanted to like talk about with you guys. And I know right now it's kind of like a one-sided conversation. You know where to find me, message me. Let's continue the conversation. Email, Substack, Instagram DMs. We have a lot of places that we can continue to converse and talk. I just wanted to share with you some of what Sara Miriam and I talked about that really, really impacted me in such a deep way that I don't often have things that I think about constantly. But from this conversation, there were multiple points and multiple just aha moments that I had that I think about all the time. So one of them was when Sara Miriam spoke about having coffee with God and like sharing with God our true emotions and feelings, our hurt, our anger, our frustration, our love, our fear. It is so powerful to think about God in a way that isn't just there's a certain way we have to behave or there's a certain, narrative that we have to have in our relationship with God. God is with us all the time. He wants to hear our true process, our true pain. Like he's there for that and he's not scared of it. Like he can handle our pain. He can handle anything that we're thinking, even anger towards him. Like he can handle it. And I just found that to be such a comforting approach because I think I'll speak for myself, like a lot of times like we get in our head or when we're feeling kind of angry or disconnected with God, we kind of pull away and we have some distance. But this approach is like, no, lean in, like talk to God about your disappointments, talk to God about how you're angry with him and how it's not fair. Like instead of pulling away and putting up those walls when we're in those scenarios and situations and feelings, like lean into that. And I found that to be really, like a warm blanket. Like I can lean in those moments. And I found myself, recently in moments in my life, actually practicing that. And instead of shutting God out or being like, okay, I'm in survival mode, so I have no time to converse with you or no time for our relationship. Like I took those moments and trust me, this summer has had plenty of those moments where I'm like, God, I have a bone to pick with you, or I'm going to tell you what's really hard for me right now, or I'm going to share with you in the moment, just even stopping for a second and casually having a conversation in our head, or even using the time where we're praying, davening, and, just not shying away from the hard feelings and sharing the hard feelings. And I really found that to be helpful. I was like, God, like this isn't working for me. Like I'm not happy. I'm quite frustrated with you. Can you like and not even expecting that's the beauty and what Sara Miriam also spoke about. It's not really expecting any like miracle or change or it's a conversation without expectations, right? It's just a true and honest relationship. When you have a true and honest relationship with a person, that's how it works. You can have true and honest conversation. And God is the ultimate relationship. So we can have true and honest conversations with God. So that is one of the really big takeaways from, our conversation. And one of the, I can go on forever, but I'll just stick with one more. One of the other highly impactful moments were for me is when we were talking about parenting, right? And parenting is hard. And we don't always make ourselves proud. Speaking for myself, like there are many, many parenting moments where I'm like, whoa, I could have done that way differently, or I could have done that way better, or I lost patience. I raised my voice. Like there's countless times where we judge ourselves pretty harshly in the way we parent. And we really, as much as we say we don't expect perfection from ourselves, we really hold ourselves to a high standard, as we should. Like as parents, we have a big job and we want to do our best, and we should have high standards. Like I'm not saying like don't worry, anything goes. Like no, we do need to hold ourselves accountable. We do need to always strive to be the best parent we can be. And at the same time, like we make mistakes, and making mistakes is going to happen. So instead of maybe trying to like avoid mistakes at all costs or really, really berate ourselves when we make a mistake, Sara Miriam said something so beautiful. She said, believe in your goodness. Believe in your goodness. Even if you make a mistake, believe that you are good and you're okay. And you have another chance. Like tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up and you're going to give it your all again. Right. And I think about this all the time because I make a ton of mistakes. And parenting is hard. And I think, especially for me, like my kids are getting older and they're a lot of teenagers and, adolescents. We're past the toddler stage and it gets pretty complicated. And I find myself kind of kind of clueless sometimes about what I'm supposed to be doing. And you'll find if you're a parent of teens, I think you'll relate. And if not, here's a little warning. I find that I very often do the wrong thing. Like it's very hard to know what they're asking for because they're complicated and they're not going to necessarily tell you straight out what they're looking for. So you get it wrong. You get it wrong a lot. And this little voice in your head, if you can train it to say believe in your goodness. Okay, you screwed up. You'll try again next time, but you are good and you are doing the best you can. And you'll wake up in the morning, you'll have another day, God willing, and you will have the opportunity to try it again. So instead of being like, oh, that was so bad and I was so horrible and I'm such a bad parent, and all the messages we send ourselves, that little tiny narrative shift, that little bug in your head that can be like, you know what? I believe in myself. I am good, right? I'm a good person who makes mistakes. I found that to be hugely, what's the word? A mind shift for me. And I really try to have that narrative a lot. And I found it to be really helpful. So those are my, because I can't talk forever, unfortunately, those were my two really, really impactful, really powerful messages that I took from this conversation. So I'm really excited to hear what landed for you, what was impactful for you. What did you feel? What did you feel when you listened to this episode? Please share with me because I want to know. And now for our fun little segment, our question answer segment, I'm excited to see where this takes us. I had a little Instagram snafu and I lost the first batch of questions that came in. So if you sent questions, please resend them. And if you didn't send any, please do. This can be really fun, but it takes participation. But I do have, I think I'm going to do 2 or 3 questions for today. Let's see where we go. And the first question is, I am living with chronic pain, finding the right therapist. How do I know? Okay. I like this question. How do you find the right therapist? It's difficult. And I'm so blessed to have a therapist that I've been with for the last 10 years or more. And it's so important to have a good therapist because a bad therapist can do some damage. That's not what we want. So I actually remember reading a checklist, sort of like a checklist on some of the things you should think about when you're looking for a therapist. Now, it's obviously this is not the be all end all list. And I'm sure there's, more things to think about, or some of these things won't apply, but I did find it to be helpful. I think I read it. I saw it a long time ago and I managed to track it down. I think it originates with Brad Reedy. So here is what he says. I'm going to read to you some of the things that he recommends looking for in a therapist. And I can say, when I look at this checklist and I think about my therapist, most of these things, or if not all, apply. So I do think it's very helpful. And I hope this helps. All right. So what to look for in a therapist? He looks for you, listens to understand, not diagnose. Okay. We want our therapist to understand us, not to try to diagnose us. If you get upset with them, they don't make you the problem. It's a big one. I don't know about you, but I get angry at my therapist a lot. Apologize when they make a mistake or hurt you. So if they get something wrong or you bring something to their attention that you're like, no, that's not right, can they apologize? And can they be like, I'm sorry, I got that wrong? Isn't anxious to fix you, laughs at themselves, doesn't need to be a good therapist, and doesn't need you to think they're a good therapist, doesn't graduate you. This is a good one. Like, I've been with my therapist for like I said, so many years. And I think some people would be like, move on, or why do you need therapy still? Or maybe you outgrew the therapist. And that does apply. But I really appreciate the fact that my therapist isn't anxious to graduate me or be like, you're done, you don't need therapy anymore. Like, I appreciate that, and is comfortable with you when there is no crisis. That is big. Like, what happened? Like, hopefully you are in therapy and you are consistent and you go long enough that not always is there a crisis. What happens in those sessions that are not crisis oriented? Like, that is big. I think that's big. So that here's the little checklist. And I really hope that helps you find the therapist that you're looking for. Therapy is an amazing tool. It's not the be all end all. It's not the only way to heal. It's not, the only thing. And I know therapy has become, thank God, so much more accessible and less stigmatized. But also, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's not everything, right? Like, therapy is just one tool in your toolbox. And if you find that that is a helpful tool, finding the right one is really important. Okay, next question. Overcoming guilt when adulting kids that aren't Torah appreciative. That's pretty big. That's a big one. Okay. I mean, I can talk about this for a long time, and of course, I'm going to be approaching this question from my personal experience. This is such an individual experience. And I'm sure if you ask different people, everyone will have something else to say, and a different journey that they took, and different guidelines that they follow, or different, mentors that help them through. So I can only speak from my experience. And I think this is a journey. I think there's a goal that we have. And I think it's work in progress. And we constantly, at least for me, I constantly learn and strive to get to the ultimate goal. And I think the ultimate goal is obviously love and acceptance and connection. And as much as we want our children to emulate our lifestyle and our values, and even more than that, if you're a Torah observant Jew, it is who we are, right? It's our life. And it's very hard when you have a child that doesn't, kind of buy in, quotation marks, right? And they have their own journey and their own path. And I think there's so many things to try. I'm going to say a lot of things that's, easily said, harder to do. But remember, this is like a goal that we're working towards. So one of the things that I've learned throughout my parenting is how little control we actually have. And the only control we have is our own behaviors and our own reactions and responses. And being a parent and raising a child, like, we really do wish we can kind of control outcomes and, their path and their journey and their pain. Like, we if we had it our way, right, we'd protect our kids from all the pain. We'd help them to be, the most successful, happy, all the good stuff. But that's just not how it works. And I don't think that's what Hashem had in mind. I think when you look at a child as Hashem's, God's child, that kind of entrusted to us to, like, in our care, and our care doesn't mean like we have any real control over who they become and who they are, right? I think of course, we have to lead our lives with, like, good values, and we do have an obligation for education, and we do want to emulate, like, beautiful behaviors, and all those things are part of our job. It's just that we can't really control or predict what your child is going to do, what they're going to receive, how they're going to interpret what they receive. And I think that's the hardest part, is like, if we think we do all the right things and we've taught our children what we want them to know, then automatically they kind of do what's expected. And that's just not how it works. And I don't think that's what Hashem had in mind. And I think it's really, really beautiful when you can recognize that each child has their journey, Each child has their own relationship with God. That's really none of our business. And I find myself when I like have a wish for my child, or I'm nervous about one of my children's behaviors, and I want that, and like my automatic response is like, that's not God wants. That's not what God wants from them. But I'm like, really, that's none of my business. What does God want from me in this moment? Like, what is my job in this moment as a parent? And I think if we continue to focus on our relationship with Hashem and God, and less on what our kids are doing and what their relationship with God is and what they're doing that's right or wrong, I think that's an ultimate goal. Hard to do, but ultimate goal. And I think if you can start to have the narrative of like, this is like what's happening right now in this moment is exactly what's meant to be happening. And I am part of this process because this is what God entrusted me with. And so what am I going to do with this scenario? What am I going to do with this situation? And I think at the end of the day, our job as parents is to have a connection, relationship, and respect. And we're not going to go into the whole topic of boundaries. Like, obviously that's an important thing, and that is on an individual basis. And you need to figure out what boundaries you want to have around, this area. But if we can focus on the connection that we have with our children, I really do think that that's what our job is. I hope some of that made sense. Again, we can go on and on in this conversation. And you mentioned guilt. And I think as parents, mom guilt's a real thing. Like when our kids are struggling, we automatically take ownership of that. And I think that's not really what we're supposed to be doing. We're not supposed to take ownership of their successes. We're not supposed to take ownership of their failures. I know we naturally feel proud when our children are thriving. But it's not about you, it's not about you. And so if you can kind of separate that and remove that, I don't know, like removing the guilt is just keep focusing on the part that you're in your control, and keep focusing on the connection, keep focusing on the fact that we don't get to control outcomes, and we just do the best we can. And if you feel like, oh, some of the mistakes you made have contributed to the way your children are acting or their behavior or how they're feeling, so then repair that. Like if you feel like there's something that you did that you can do differently, so focus on that. Focus on the things that you feel like you can do differently, and focus on the relationship and the connection and the repair. But other than that, the guilt doesn't really serve you or anybody. Anyways, that's some of my thoughts. Hopefully we'll have a chance to discuss further. Last question. This is a kind of cute, easy one. And this person wrote, random, but do you have cleaning help? I just tickled my funny bone when I read that question. I absolutely do have cleaning help. I would not survive without my cleaning help. So I very much rely on household upkeep. I definitely delegate, and that has been a lifesaver. Honestly, Hashem knows, God knows what you can handle. And I think he sends, sometimes it takes longer than we want, but I think he does send us the tools and the people in our lives and the support that we need. So when you have support, or you have someone that wants to help, or you have the opportunity for support and help, take it, because God is telling you these are your people. So I have a wonderful, wonderful housekeeper. I always tell everybody that without her, I wouldn't be sane. So shout out to all the housekeepers that keep us standing. That wraps up the question and answer for today. I'm your host, Chavie Brooke. It takes a village to produce this and create this. And I'm so grateful to my amazing team. Our producer is Eli Ben-Chion. Audio is edited and mixed by Chase Martin and Louis Quero. Production assistant, Shayna Ben-Chion. Design and creative is Rifki Markosian. Music by Basia Schechter and Daniel Ori. And this is Totally Unexpected.